My name is Leah Huggins. I'm a wife, a mother, and a proud U.S. Navy veteran. After 2 tours to Iraq, my husband was diagnosed with PTSD. My world spiraled out of control as fear, anxiety, doubt, and depression took over. I gave my life to Christ, took on a new mindset, and let go of the negativity of my past. I now help wives to find healing, encouragement, and strategy to overcome the effects of PTSD on their daily lives and in their marriage. So come on in and let's talk about it. Welcome to Marriage, Motherhood, and PTSD. What's up, everybody? Welcome to Marriage, Motherhood, and PTSD. This is the place where I empower and encourage women to take back their life as I give them the tools that are needed for self-love, growth, and resilience. I'm your host, Coach Leah, and I'm so glad that you joined us today. Y'all, we got a good episode for you today. I am so excited. Today we're going to be talking about soul care. Yep, that's taking care of your inner man or woman. Okay. I thought this was important for us to do so, especially in these days, because no matter what's going on around you, no matter the storms that you're facing in life, no matter how hard times are going to get around you, I want you to know that you can survive. You can thrive in times of hardship. And the secret is that the real battle is fought on the inside. It's not just what's going on the outside. It's not just what you see. It's not just, what's going on the outside, but it's what's going on the inside that determines if and how you're going to make it through this moment. So we just have to take special care, not just to our bodies, but to our inner man. And that's our mind, our spirit, and our soul. And that's what we're going to be talking about today, y'all. I'm so excited. I can't wait to get into this topic. But first, y'all, we have a special guest in the building, y'all. He is a best-selling author and a speaker. He's a life coach. He's a faith-based licensed professional counselor and a global apostolic leader. And through his calling, he helps people to heal, to find their purpose, and to maximize their potential. He is the founder and leader of the Soul Healing Training Academy and also the CEO of his own business practice, which is called Soul Healing Psychotherapy and Wellness. But most important, he is a family man. He's a husband and father to his amazing and beautiful wife and daughter. Y'all help me welcome to the show, Dr. Joshua P. Smith. Yay!
Wow.
Yes, Dr.
So glad.
Joshua. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so honored that you came on the show. I'm so happy to have you here. So tell the people a little bit about yourself. Tell them where you're from, what you do.
Okay. So again, I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me in this space. My name is Joshua Smith, and I'm from Gulfport, Mississippi, born and raised there on the coast. Recently transplanted to Houston, Texas. So this is where my family and I are at this time, but definitely the Gulf Coast is home. And so I just enjoy, as you said, helping people find purpose, helping people heal. That's what I've dedicated my life to, and I'm honored to be here with you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So how did you get into the field of counseling? Like, what drew you into that profession?
Wow, that's a good question. So I would say it was a childhood thing. I've always been the person that was responsible. I've always been the person that people came to. Even as a preteen and a teenager, I would always wonder why people would talk to me about their issues, about their problems. And these weren't just peers. These were people that were older than me as well. And so I've always been a quiet person. So I guess that makes me a good listener.
Yes.
So people always unloaded on me, even complete strangers. So that's been my experience. So I'm one of those people that's multi-hyphenated. So I could go into a variety of things. I had a lot of dreams growing up of things that I wanted to do. And so when I started in college, I started as a music major. And so as that transitioned, that after that first year, that didn't work out for me. I didn't like it. And so I happened upon a psychology class, and I took that class, and the rest is history. So that was in 2004. Yeah, it's 2004. And I've been on that track ever since.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I'm finding on this journey that God uses everything that we've learned
on the journey to help us in where
Yes.
we are in that moment. So I love that. I didn't know that you were a music major, but I've seen you play piano before. So,
Yes.
yes. So I just wanted to definitely take a moment. I want to give honor where honor is due. I have known Dr. Joshua since maybe around 2009, 2010 time frame. We actually went to the same church together. I knew him as Prophet Joshua at that time. He was the youth minister at our church. My kids used to love going to his class, not only because they got pizza every week, but also because, they really enjoyed what they were learning in the class. And we still laugh today about some of the things that they told me happened in the class. So you definitely made an impression on them. And as a parent, I wanted to thank you for being a part of my children's spiritual development.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's major for me. I appreciate you for sharing that.
Yes, yes. Now, having said that, you have also been a part of my spiritual development. You are an amazing teacher. I used to love when you preached because you would give such a good background, on whatever you were talking about. And when we would come out of the service, I would leave with a whole new perspective on the stories and scriptures that I had been studying forever, but I was able to see it different. And there was one time a couple years ago, I was cleaning out my closet and I came across these papers right here. I had to bring them. These papers right here. This is the packet from the
Wow.
2013 Dream Again Mentorship Weekend. Okay, I'm so excited. When I found this, I was like, I have to show him. Now, if I recall, this was your first event, and I have been a supporter ever since because, after that, it was worshipers on the front line, and it just got bigger and better every year. So I want to thank you for following God, because what He gave you, it actually blessed and it's still blessing so many people. Your obedience was definitely a part of my spiritual development. And I just wanted to thank you, for all the prayers, all the teaching, all the inspiration that you've given me over the years. Cause I realized that, I'm kind of following in your footsteps now. So thank you for paving the way and showing me how it's done.
Absolutely. To God be the glory.
Yes, yes. Now, part of your ministry is actually pouring into pastors and to leaders and helping them in their own soul care. I think this is so important because somebody has to help the help, right? As a pastor, as a leader, as a caregiver, you're actually taking on the problems and the concerns of the people that are in your care. And you got to be careful that, and while you're helping them to overcome and, to be resilient, that you don't lose yourself in the process. And that's exactly what I'm doing here on the show. This is my platform where I want to teach people how to be resilient, how to overcome what they're going through, and how to help those that they love with what they're going through. And in order to do that, you have to be an anchor for them. But we have to be anchored
Yes.
ourselves. And that
Yes.
actually starts with taking care of the inner man. So let's start there. Can you tell me what is soul care and why is it important to our mental health and well-being?
Wow. So I love what you said about helping the help. We all have the responsibility to take care of our souls. Genesis 2:7, it talks about how God made us. He made us body, soul, and spirit. And so we are definitely interconnected. There are a lot of different parts of us, at least three, that come together to make us one. And so one piece of that is the soul. And so we first hear about the soul there in Genesis 2:7, and it translates out as our mind, our will, our emotions, our intellect, appetite, even our heart. So all of that is what I call the dimension of soul. It's our soul that makes us human. And so oftentimes we are very focused on external things, physical things, and that's great. But we forget about our inner man, as you said. That's our soul. In 3 John, he says, I wish above all things that you prosper and be in health, even as your soul prospers. And so our soul is really important that it is intact, that it is well, in order for the other parts of us to function correctly.
So, I always say that peace it's not necessarily the absence of trouble or problems. It's actually being able to find your anchor in that storm, or whatever it is that grounds you and that gives you the strength in the midst of that storm. And that peace comes from within. So, can you tell me what it looks like
Right.
on the outside when you have a healthy soul?
Wow. So what it looks like on the outside to have a healthy soul is a healthy perspective, which is internal. But if my perspective is healthy, then everything I do is healthy.
Yeah.
Right. Jesus talks about how out of the abundance of the heart, the soul, the mouth will speak. And so one of the ways you can tell if someone is healed or not, if you're healed and healthy or not, is what's coming out of the mouth.
Mm.
Right. The words, even the behaviors, because we behave out of what we believe, right? We behave out of those core beliefs. Proverbs 23:7 talks about as a man thinks in his heart, his soul, his center, his inner man. So he is in behavior, the Amplified adds. And so those are the main two ways that you can tell if you're healed, if you're healthy, is the way that you behave and the way that you speak your language.
Yeah, that kind of goes into my next question. You know, basically, I was going to ask, what are some of the signs that we may see that indicate that our soul needs healing? You know, when do we know it's more than I'm just having a moment or I'm going through something?
I would say patterns. So
Patterns.
our patterns of behavior over time, because as you just said, we all have moments, right? We all have difficult seasons, but healing is about resilience.
Mm,
Mental is about resilience. And that's just the ability to bounce back and to not stay stuck in whatever it is that you're experiencing. So that really speaks to our health, our mental health, again, when we're able to bounce back after difficulties. But if there's been pervasive patterns of not being able to see the sun shining, so to speak, not being able to come out of something, then we really have to pause and look at, is this something that we need to address within the soul? Because we can lie and we can be untruthful, but our patterns never lie.
yeah, that's good. That's good. So I believe that, these days we're in what the Bible calls perilous times. We're in a time of uncertainty, hostility, ungodliness, mass miseducation, thanks to the internet. It's just really crazy out here. How can we protect our soul? Like, what should self care look like beyond, massages and makeovers?
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that because those things are not self-care.
Yes.
That's self-indulgence, that's comfort. Those are hobbies. Those are those things, right? They can be a part of your self-care plan,
Yeah.
but in and of itself, massage or going to the nail shop and your hair done, that's not self-care.
Yeah.
Self-care looks like guarding your heart. I
Mhm.
take us back to scripture to guard our heart, keep our heart with all diligence, heart, soul, right? Interchangeable in the Hebrew. He says to guard that place because NIV says everything that you do will flow from your heart.
Mhm.
Everything that you do will flow from your soul. And so self-care looks like actually guarding that place, doing what is best for you. Let me give you an example. So you talked about the mass information
Mhm.
and the internet, and I would even go as far as to say mass information on television, right? Because the news isn't always what it needs to be. It's not always the truth. And so self-care, especially in these times, often looks like turning off the television.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
looks like taking social media breaks. I was teaching a class the other week and I told them like I have literally taken breaking news off my phone. So
Mm.
I forget which app it was, but it would shoot me like it was either Apple or something would shoot me breaking news alert.
Yeah.
I took it off because it became triggering,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Because when you start hearing those dings, or in my case, a person that doesn't turn their phone off, silent, you start seeing the vibration or hearing the vibration of the phone, you're
Mhm.
thinking something is going on. And it's nothing, right? It's actually not breaking news.
Right.
But we've been trained, especially with social media and with the news, we've been trained to always have everything on, right? And to
Yeah.
always have this constant input of information. And that really affects the health of your soul.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. My mother, she's 80 something years old and she loves watching David Muir. That's her evening news. They'll call her during that time. And there was a point where it was like it was just too much for her. And I tell her, go turn the Golden Girls on, go do something, something else besides this. You have to stop watching that, And it's the same for myself. I have to be very mindful about the things that I have continuously playing or on social media scrolling, because that could be an addiction as well too. Just like you said,
Yep.
it's you have to be careful and guard your heart. So on that same
Yes.
vein of conversation, as you said, the Bible says we should guard our heart because everything that we do flows from it. There are some things, that we experience in life that are beyond our control, and what trauma does, it really
Yes.
changes the way that a person sees the world, the way they view the people around them, and quite honestly, it can change your spiritual perspective as well, too. Some people go through things and, they get mad at God, they lose their faith, they may even stop believing. And, when we experience a traumatic event, we may question, where was God in this? Or why did God let it happen? Or why me? That's a big one. Why me? And I believe that, this is all part of what they're talking about when they say guard your heart. Because when the heart turns cold, when you get one of these, the heart of stone, like they talk about in the Bible, it changes who you are as a person.
Yes.
And I believe that spiritual death, it can definitely lead to an actual physical death. So this is why we have to guard our hearts. We can't wait until the trial comes to start doing the work, because by then it's too late. And if you don't build yourself up in that way,
Yeah.
to be able to stand against what's coming to you, in that day of adversity, that time, you're going to crumble. So Dr. Joshua, I just wanted to talk about the things
Yes.
that we can do to guard our hearts. We talked about shutting down TV and the media, social media and things like that. What are some things that we can do, especially ahead of time, that will help to guard our hearts?
Yeah, I'm a firm believer of the saying that says an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And so I'm really about getting in front of problems, getting in front of issues, having the tools that are necessary that, like you said, once you're in something, you're able to actually go through it and go through it. Yes. So we hear in church all the time that the mind is the battlefield and it's the battleground. We hear that, but we don't often hear about how we fight that battle and how we win that.
Yeah.
And so one thing that I would say as it relates to guarding the heart and winning the battle is really guarding the way that we think, right? I tell people all the time, every thought that you have isn't true, and every thought that you have isn't yours.
Okay.
And so you don't have to entertain every thought. The Bible tells us to cast down those thoughts, those imaginations. Those are really strongholds, right? So the way that we pull down strongholds is not through prayer. We pull down strongholds. 2 Corinthians 10:5 talks about demolishing arguments.
Yes.
Those are nations. Those are thoughts. And so we really have to do the work and be intentional about casting down thoughts, redirecting thoughts. And a good place that we learn that is in therapy.
Yeah.
We
Yep.
learn like, hey, you've had this pattern of thinking for years,
Mm.
and it has produced this result.
Mm-hmm.
As therapy is not about venting. That's what you do with a friend. Therapy is really about getting the skills that you need, the tools that you need to not only deal with what's happening now in your life, but what may come. Also, you can deal with things that have happened, because just because something is over, you mentioned trauma, just
Mhm.
because something over doesn't mean it's over. Like those things go into our subconscious, those things are blocked in our soul. So
Yeah.
even when we're trying to serve the Lord, Paul tells us it's with the mind you serve the Lord,
Yeah.
not your spirit, because your spirit is good. Your spirit has been regenerated. It's connected to God. It's the mind that needs that constant renewal. And
Right.
so often than not, you need a third party. You need somebody outside of you, an objective party that's able to challenge the way that you think and is able to walk you through those past traumatic experiences until you experience healing. That may not happen on the altar.
Mm-hmm.
That may not happen in a church service. You may need, and I'm saying you may, you do, we do.
Yeah.
Everybody not only needs counseling, but we deserve counseling and therapy, because you cannot escape life without having some type of trauma. It's just inevitable because we're a fallen nature. We're in a fall. And so there's trauma all around us. But
Yeah.
therapy, counseling, it really helps us to dig through that stuff and make sure that it's not impacting our spiritual health. Because you can believe that whatever's happening in the soul, it can bleed over into not just the spirit, but the body as well.
Yeah, yeah. I think you settled that issue good because the question in church is always, when it comes to healing and soul care, is Jesus enough? Are you if you go to therapy, are you really saved? Are you really dependent on Jesus? But I definitely think you have answered that answered that question. I saw a couple years ago you did a T-shirt that said Jesus heals,
Yeah.
but therapy helps.
Almost
So
went today. I couldn't find mine. But yeah, I do believe that. I pushed that. I believe it so much that I created a t-shirt.
Yeah. So can you and you kind of went into detail with the answer that you just gave, but as far as talking about the role of your faith in your therapy process, can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So faith is not the absence of trials,
Mhm.
not the absence of trauma. It's not the absence of fear, not the absence of any of those things. So more often than not, we have been trained traditionally and religiously to use our faith as a cover up
Mm.
so that
Whew,
we don't have to go through.
take a read. That's good.
We don't have to go through, just praise your way through. Like you said earlier, I help pastors and preach your way through like all those things that we have. And so over the years, you start realizing, hey, this isn't working.
Mhm.
Like I'm pleasing, but I'm still battling.
Yeah.
Right. They're not enemies. We tie them together and they work together. The soul and the spirit, they're partners. And so instead of using our faith as a cover up and a cover all,
Mhm.
the better approach would be to use our faith to help us navigate.
Mm.
Right. There was a study done in California in 2009, and they were interviewing clients at a community mental health center. And they found that 80% of those clients had some type of faith. They had some type of belief system, and it actually helped them through what they were going through. They had better outcomes in their treatment because they were not hiding behind faith.
Mm.
They were using and leveraging faith to push them through the process.
Yeah.
Right. And so faith and mental health, there is no separation there. They go together and they go together really well. But we have to make sure that we're not using our faith to mask or to cover up what the work that we need to do. There's another shirt, pray and do the work.
And do the work right there. Yes.
Faith without works is dead.
That's right. That's right. That is so good. That's so good. So, in doing my study and my research over the years, I've learned that a lot of the problems that we're dealing with today, they actually stem from trauma that we may have experienced in childhood. We have trauma with the big T, where we face some kind of harrowing experience, where you or a loved one, you're in actual grave danger. And then there's also trauma with the little t, that may have not been necessarily life threatening, but it's still life changing in some way, whether it's disappointment or rejection, being discriminated against, anything that can change the way that you view yourself and the world around you in a negative way. And so a lot of this happens in childhood. So, what's the process? How do we go about healing our inner child?
That's good.
Mhm.
So as you said, our inner child is that part of us that has experienced those events. I think it goes back to what I said earlier about therapy, because more often than not, we don't know that we've been affected so much by it,
Mhm.
because it could be cultural or it could be normal.
Yeah.
We could think that the reactions that we have is a part of our personality.
Mhm.
And then my famous question is that your personality or is that your pain?
Mm. Yeah.
So we really don't know until we sit down with someone and they're like, hey, this that you experienced, that was trauma,
Mm.
right? That should not have happened. And now let's track and trace how trauma has affected you.
Yeah.
And so I'm loving the fact that now people are more open, even in the church, to therapy. because it's really shining the light on we have issues that we really need to dig in and handle those issues. And you need someone who is licensed, who is trained, equipped to help you to walk through those things. And the way that I do trauma therapy is like piece by piece. Like we're going to literally do a timeline of your life. And I promise you, every time I do that timeline with clients, the trauma goes back to 2 years old.
Wow.
3 years, 4 and 5 years old. Right? So we have to go back and we have to deal with every traumatic experience, the experience itself, the effects that it had on your body, your spirit, your thinking, all that. That takes work.
Yeah.
And it takes time. But it's worth it.
It is. Absolutely. How do we keep the trauma that we've experienced in life from spilling over to our children and creating generational trauma for them?
Yeah, I'm glad you said that or asked that, because what we don't handle in our time, our children have to deal with.
Wow.
I compare it to David and Solomon. Both great kings, but David had issues that he didn't deal with. He was able to conquer Goliath, but not his flesh. And so he in turn passed that issue down to his son Solomon, who was 10 times worse that as he was. So the giants that we don't face, our children have to face.
Yeah.
And so it comes back to actually doing the work, being intentional about recognizing that this isn't normal, this is not okay, and then modeling to our children, to the next generation, this is how to handle emotions, because the only way they learn how to handle emotions is through their parents.
Yeah.
Right? So children don't only learn things that they need for education, for cognitive ability. They not only learn that at home, they also learn how to handle emotions. So if we don't model that as parents, then we're really passing on our trauma, because we may not be passing on events, and we can be very, very protective of our children, but sometimes they need to be protected from us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because if our reactions to things aren't where they need to be, that's actually what we're passing down. We're not passing down the trauma, we're passing down the trauma responses.
That's
Yeah.
good.
And I love that you said generational trauma, because I'm of the belief that oftentimes it's not generational curses, because that's something handled spiritually. It's generational trauma. It's things that have been passed down. And there's a theory called epigenetics that really just speaks to how trauma gets into the molecular system.
Can you spell epigenetics? Because I'm going to look that up. Please.
Epigenetics. So EPI genetics, so epigenetics.
Oh, epigenetics. Okay.
And so it's talking about genes. So trauma can't change genes, so to speak, or change DNA, but it starts to alter how DNA looks, if that makes sense. It alters the molecular system. It alters our response. So when I say that things get really deep down in us, they get down in us to the molecular level, to DNA, right? To the point that if you study like Holocaust victims, you will see that hundreds of years later, some of the children's children were still dealing with the effects of the Holocaust. And they had not experienced the Holocaust. That's like the children of Israel, when God told them, none of you going into the wilderness, I'll wait until all of your bodies drop dead in the wilderness. That's literally what he said, right? So we get into Joshua. It's a new generation, new people. None of them had experienced Egypt and the wilderness outside of Joshua and Caleb. But God tells Joshua in the book of Joshua, take them and circumcise them.
Yeah.
Take them and circumcise them because of the remnants of bondage. Wait a minute. They never been in bondage. These are, but their parents had been in bondage. So their parents passed down these reactions.
Yeah.
Their parents passed down these mindsets. That's epigenetics from a biblical standpoint. Like there's still some residue there, even though the child didn't experience it, the parents did.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That's a lot. That is good. That is good. So What advice would you give to the person that is wanting to help someone to deal with their trauma? I know the work has to be done by the person themselves, the individual, but like as a parent, as a spouse, how do I help my loved one uh, in going through their trauma? What can I do?
Yeah. So what a person can do is provide support.
Mhm.
So provide support, and whatever that looks like for those individuals in that scenario, that's going to really determine how you define support. So support is very big. That's major. Another thing that I would say is make sure that you're not being a trigger.
Oh, okay. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. So we can trigger in any type of human interaction. There is the propensity to trigger one another,
Mhm.
right? But you really have to learn to ask questions in order to make sure that you're not the person that's causing re-injury.
Mhm.
So what you want to do is ask questions. Ask questions, pay attention to different things, because you don't want to re-traumatize by being that trigger. Because when a person is triggered, they're back into that experience as if it's happening right now.
Yeah.
So physically they're not there, but their mind is telling them this is where you are, right? And you got sort of fight, flight, freeze, and you got all of these reactions to being triggered. So relationally, we really have to learn people's triggers and make sure that we're not re-triggering them. Definitely not intentional,
Mhm.
right? You be that person that's intentionally triggering someone,
Right.
because that's right. That's a whole nother set of issues.
Yeah, that person that knows
More
how to
often,
push your buttons.
that part. More often than not, though, it's going to be unintentional. Like
Yeah.
we don't know that we're triggering one another. So there has to be communication. There has to be conversation around, hey, this is triggering for me. So those are the two things: support, however that looks, and then making sure that you're not a trigger yourself.
Yeah, I love that.
Have you checked out the PTSD Wives Handbook? This book is for the wife whose spouse has survived trauma and is now navigating through mood swings, flashbacks, and mishandled emotions. PTSD can create a toxic home environment and cause a divide in the closest and most meaningful relationships. As a caretaker, the PTSD wife is finding herself at the receiving end of anger, aggression, and constant negativity. This can create a personal, mental, and spiritual health crisis for her. In this book, Coach Leah uncovers the hidden wounds of trauma and the effects that it can have on your relationship. Based on biblical principles, she teaches you the tools and resources that are needed to handle stressful situations and to seek help from the Lord and foster a deeper relationship with Him. By reading this book and putting the principles into action, you're going to learn how to take control of your life and grab hold of the power that lies within. Grab your copy of the PTSD Wives Handbook today by clicking the link in the show notes. Now, back to the show.
What I want to go into is knowing the importance of community. You have to have the right people around you. And
Absolutely.
it's really important, when it comes to our healing process. The pandemic, it brought about, what I consider to be another pandemic of loneliness and isolation, and I think we're seeing the results of that now. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of community and the role of having a strong support system in your healing process?
Absolutely. I say this often: we learn in community, we grow in community, and we're healed in community. So James says, confess your faults one to another, pray for one another,
Mhm.
so that you may be healed. Right? That's James 5:16, I believe. So confess, pray, pray for one another, and then you can experience healing. That's community. Then the second part of that verse that we often jump to says the effectual fervent prayer of the righteous availeth much. You can't even get to the effectual fervent prayer of the righteous availeth much until you're in community and you're healed. Holmes even says he puts the lonely in families. And so community is very important for the healing process. And it's important to have healthy community, because if it's not healthy community, then it becomes what we call a trauma bond.
Trauma bond. Yeah.
So in trauma bonding, people come together because they have shared trauma.
Mm-hmm.
They have shared offenses even. So, and it's nothing wrong with that in and of itself, because sometimes we are attracted to like kind, like, you've been through something, you may tend to be in community with someone that's been through the same thing. Nothing wrong with that, but we have to be intentional.
Yeah.
We're not coming together just to talk about our wounds and to talk about who hurt us. Right? We're not on the phone just talking about all of our offenses. That's a trauma bond.
Mm.
So trauma brought us together, and then trauma is keeping us together. Because if one person or persons get healed, then the relationships start experiencing friction.
Yeah.
Why? I've seen this over and over again. Because that person gets healed, they don't want to talk about it anymore. Not from that perspective. They don't want to sit on the phone all day talking about how they were offended.
Yeah. After
You
you done
remember
come
back in
out of it.
right. Remember back in 1999, we were all in the same whatever together kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so there's a repetition. The healed person has a new perspective. They don't want to dwell on it. They want to talk about, how do we walk out of this? How do we walk through it? And so it challenges relationships when one person gets healed. That's how you know it's a trauma bond.
Wow.
So to make sure that we're in healthy, that's why I said that, healthy community, healthy relationships. The trauma may have brought us together, but it shouldn't be keeping us together.
Yeah. Yeah. Gotta come out. Gotta move. Keep moving.
Yeah.
You said something in answering that question that made me kind of think about something. I want to go back a little bit when we're talking about faith in your process of healing. Prayer and meditation. Can we talk about the importance of that during your healing process?
Yeah. So prayer, of course, keeps our connection with God. And you're going to need that. You're going to need to have connection, because that's our anchor. That's our hope. The anchor earlier. Hebrews talks about having an anchor for the soul, right? And that's our faith. That's our hope. So
Yeah.
in prayer, we keep that connection. Meditation is important because it helps us to think on the right things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Philippians 4:8 talks about the things that are lovely, the things that are true, the things that are good report, that are praiseworthy, right? Thinking on those things. Often, though, when people hear meditation, it gets a bad connotation because people are thinking in terms of like Eastern religions. So thinking about like meditation related to calling in other gods and other spirits and things like that. That's something that's in our Bible, right? Psalm 1 and 2 talks about the blessed man. Why is he blessed? He meditates on the law of the Lord day and night.
Yeah.
And so meditation is very important because it helps us to think of the right things. Eastern meditation is if I can summarize this and simplify it, Eastern meditation is more so about in yourself, coming to that place of what they call nothingness, right? Being a clean slate.
Clear it.
Christian meditation. Yeah, Judeo-Christian meditation is about filling yourself with something. That something is the word.
Yeah.
You meditate on the law of the Lord, the word of the Lord, day and night. So meditation and prayer are vitally important to our healing process.
Yeah. How do we get past, where we are in that moment because it can be hard if you go through a trauma, if you're feeling the effects of that trauma, sometimes it's hard to concentrate or even have the desire to want to pray. So how do you get past that when you know it's what you need to do, but you're just not feeling it in the moment? How do you get past that?
I would say create a schedule of prayer. And when I say schedule a prayer, like make it a lifestyle. So there are times when you're not going to feel like praying, but the prayers that you've already prayed, are they enough to sustain you now? The Bible talks about the Spirit making intercession with moanings and groanings. Here's the part that we miss. Moanings and groanings that cannot be uttered. So there are times when we cannot utter anything. It comes out as a moan. It comes out as a groan. It comes out as a Lord help. We can't be so religious. They were like, well, I'm not praying a full prayer, right? I'm having a full prayer session. No, sometimes your spirit just needs to pray because your spirit is in such agony that there's nothing left to pray.
Yeah.
So having that lifestyle of prayer, you understand that there are times that you're not able to articulate words. Doesn't mean you're not praying. It doesn't mean you're not spiritual.
Yeah. That goes back to preparing that heart ahead of time.
Ahead of time.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about resilience. So of course we all go through some things. And the truth is, we're going to go through more things.
Right.
So it doesn't stop. So the key is, of course, we have to learn how to go through it and not let it break us. Resilience is being able to go through a crisis or a hardship that has the potential to break you, but you come out on the other side of it with a new and a positive outlook on life and, that situation that you survived. This is not easy. Resilience is a process and it takes a lot of work and a lot of time. So can you tell us about the process of becoming resilient? How can we take our pain and grow from it?
Yeah. So I'm a big fan of finding meaning.
Yeah.
So, you went through that. What did it teach you? It's not dismissive of going through it, but like, what did it teach you? What did you learn?
Yeah.
How did you grow? What are you going to do about it kind of thing?
Mhm.
Like, how are you going to redirect the anger and whatever other emotions you're having about what you went through? How are you going to redirect that into a positive direction?
Mhm. Mhm.
Because as believers, we do understand that all things work together for the good, not just the good stuff,
Yeah.
but all things.
All
Right?
things.
So it takes time. That's the only answer to that. It takes time to really work through like, hey, what did this teach me? You may not be able to identify that right then, but it did teach you something.
Yeah.
Therapy is always good with that because it may help you to pull out, the meaning of this. Like why I experienced this. There is a meaning. And even if you can't find a meaning, you can redirect it into something. You can
Yeah.
channel it into something. But I like that you said it's a process because there is a such thing as false resilience. And false resilience is when you just refuse to go through that process. Like, and you're just saying, I'm good. I'm
I'm all
okay.
right. I'm
I'm
good.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That was years ago. Yeah. That's false resilience.
Yeah. Wow.
Real resilience is, okay, that was hard. That was difficult. Let me face this. Let me walk through this. Let me pull the meaning out of this. So it really is a process.
Wow. So the bottom line is that you can't get through it until you actually face it and actually deal with
Yes.
yourself. That's good.
Yes.
That's good.
Yes. There's no other way around it.
Whew, well, Dr. Joshua, I tell you what, this has been amazing. Like right now I'm working, so I can't stop, but I know for sure that I'll be going back over this episode with my notes, my pen and paper, taking notes. This was just really good information, and I know that it helped a lot of people. So we're just about finished here, but I do have one more question to ask you.
Okay.
What do you say to the person that, in this moment they've been defeated by life? That
Mm.
feels like they're at the end of their rope, they're overwhelmed, they're stressed, they're having trouble processing what they're feeling, what they're experiencing. What do you say to that person who has that broken spirit and contrite heart?
Yeah, I would say to you that there is hope, even when it doesn't feel like there's hope.
Yeah.
So hope is not a feeling, it's an assurance, it's a knowing that things will be okay. It won't always be as it is right now. So I would encourage that person to really hold on to your hope for better days, for brighter future. Hold on to your faith in God and just breathe.
Yeah.
Just take some moments, take some days, take some weeks, however long you need, and just breathe, right? And just settle your heart and your mind. You don't have to rush through the process. It is a process, but you don't have to rush through it.
Yeah.
Take your time and heal. But things really, really do get better.
Yeah. And you know what? And I know I said this was the last question, but I just thought of something else. I'm so sorry. Um, Grief. I wanted to
Yeah.
talk for a minute on the topic of grief. How do we and it goes back to saying that, it is a process, it does take time. What are some things that we can help with dealing with grief?
Yeah. So grief is a big deal. It definitely, like you said, it is a process. What I would encourage a person to do is to look up stages of grief.
Mm.
Look up those stages of grief. There's a 5-stage model. There's a 7-stage model. Just Google it and you'll be able to identify what stage that you're in. Be honest with yourself because in every stage, there are things that you can do to help you process through that stage so that you don't get stuck. But I also like to add that grief never goes away.
Mm. Never
It
goes
just
away.
changes. It just changes shapes. It changes how we deal with it, but grief is the price that we pay.
Mm.
Grief is love, right? So
Yeah.
there wouldn't be grief if there was no love.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Wow.
So grief doesn't go away. I know people that have, they lost someone or something, because grief is not just about death. It's about transition and loss as well. I know people that have lost people 20, 30 years ago. They still miss them. And we don't often normalize that. Like, hey, that's okay. And you have your moments. But after 20, 30 years, the moments don't feel as fresh.
Yeah.
That's an indicator of like you're journeying through that, you're healing. But healing doesn't mean you don't miss the person or that thing or that whatever. So, like I said earlier, it gets better, but you really have to identify what stage that you're in and make sure that you are progressing through those stages.
Yeah, that is good. Wow, this has been a good episode. This episode is amazing. Apostle, I want to thank you so much for coming on this show. Tell the people where they can find you and how they can get more information about your ministry and what you have to offer.
Sure. So my website is www.thejoshuasmith.com. THE Joshua Smith. All of my information is on there. My contact, my books, products, all that is on there. They can also find me on social media by typing in Dr. Joshua P. Smith on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, all those, TikTok, everywhere. Just type Dr. Joshua P. Smith and you'll find me there.
Awesome. Thank you again for coming on the show. This was amazing, y'all. Let's give it up for Dr. Joshua P. Smith, y'all. Yay! Thank you. Well, you guys, that is all my time for today. Join us next week for another amazing and powerful episode. But until then, I want you to be encouraged, be empowered, and be blessed. Peace, y'all.